welcome to our broadcast today. My name is Michelle Herzog. I'm the History Social Science Consultant here at the Los Angeles County Office of Education, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this very special webcast about the Partnership for 21st Century Skills in California. Now that California is officially a P21 state, there's a lot of exciting things being done in schools to promote the integration of the 4 C's: critical thinking and problem solving, communication, collaboration, and creativity and innovation into and across all content areas to prepare all our students for college, career, and civic life in the 21st century. Our distinguished guest today will tell us about some of the P20 work going on everywhere. In a moment, you're going to meet Dr. Stephen Payne, the president of the Partnership for 21st Century Skills. And we're very excited to have a wonderful panel with us. From the California Department of Education, we have David Militzer, who is leading that effort up in Sacramento, and you'll hear from him a little bit and the Department of Education's point of view. So glad you're here, David.
Thank you and the LA County Office of Education for hosting this.
Oh, we're excited very much. And then you'll hear from our expert at the district level, Anaheim Union High School District, good friend and colleague Michael Mitsuda, who's led this effort across the state and also across an entire school district. So Michael, we're so glad you're here too.
Glad to be here, Michelle.
Great. And I know you're going to enjoy meeting Manuel Colon, who's the principal of Savannah High School in the Anaheim Union High School District. We know there's a lot of great P21 things going on, but Savannah's special because they're our very first California P21 exemplar school, and so we are showcasing them today, and we have their principal here, Manuel Colon. So welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Glad you could be here. And because this is a live webcast, you, our audience, you're invited to ask questions by typing them at the bottom of your screen in the chat box, and we will be intermittently, hopefully, be able to respond to some questions that you have from the field. And afterward, this broadcast will be archived for future viewing as well. So before we begin, let's just take a moment to see how the P21 initiative has empowered students here in California, first at Savannah High School, as I mentioned, the first school to be recognized as a California P21 exemplar school.
Savannah High School exemplifies a very transformational environment. They have made such tremendous gains in terms of transforming a school from top-down, standard-based driven to what do we need to do to ensure our students are prepared for post-secondary experiences. And really, we talk about college and career, really it's career, and offer those 21st century skills, offer those programs that lift up that skill set, ensuring that all students have access and that students really embrace 21st century thinking.
MESA stands for Math, Engineering, Science Achievement. At our school, it takes the form of an engineering class. So what the students are doing in the MESA class is they're really working on a long-term engineering-related project. A lot of the projects are entered in various competitions that are held throughout Southern California.
The most important project for me in the MESA program has been the Solar Cup project, which is where students take 6 months to construct a boat powered by 2 car batteries and solar panels.
Because none of the projects that we do are capable of being completed by one student by themselves. He had to realize how essential it was to work as part of a team and what it meant to be an effective team leader.
MESA has introduced me to the idea of being an engineer, and through the projects that I've been in, I've really developed my ability to communicate, because beforehand I wasn't able to develop ideas that I had and be able to accurately communicate them to other people.
I really want to go to Cal Poly. Eventually, I want to be a human relations specialist.
After high school, I plan on attending MIT to major in electrical and mechanical engineering so that I can then become an engineer.
I've had a long journey. Before Savannah last year, I went to 3 different high schools. If I didn't end up going to school here, I probably wouldn't be going to college. I am planning to go to Chico State, and I want to become a therapist for mentally disabled.
21st Century Skills to us is being college and career ready. We want them to be investigators, critical thinkers, and inquirers, to ask a lot of questions, as well as being personally and academically accountable. We believe that when they leave Savannah, they're going to be ready for any career, they're going to be ready for college, and they're going to be ready to take on whatever comes before them.
That's really great work. You just want to go back to school and have a do-over. We're going to learn some more about P21 at Savannah High School later in our broadcast, but let's start with the big picture. We have Dr. Stephen Payne, the president of the Partnership for 21st Century Skills. Dr. Payne's going to provide us a brief history and overview of P21 and how it's transforming education across the nation. Steve, we're so excited you could join us today from West Virginia.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much for the invitation, and very pleased to be a part of this broadcast. P21 is an organization that began approximately 10 years ago. We're the leading national advocacy group for 21st century learning and readiness for all students in the country. As I said, a 10-year history that has brought together education, business, and the policymaking community. We're a thought leader with regard to 21st century skills, and we have the infamous rainbow designed framework that serves as a model from which all within this country take their lead for 21st century learning skills. So as we look at the framework, I just want to make sure that we always emphasize the point that we lead with content, we lead with content, we lead with content. So at the core of the framework are the core subjects. We call them the 3 R's, and also 21st century content themes. For example, we know in this 21st century it's critically important for our students to be financially literate, to understand health literacy. We believe those are all very important content themes to emphasize. The arts are critically important for our kids in this 21st century. But surrounding and integrated into those core subjects and into those 21st century content themes, as Michelle has already mentioned, we strongly advocate for and believe in probably what we've become known for best, the 4 C's: critical thinking and problem solving, oral and written communications, children and students being creative and innovative, and also our businesses out there today tell us very strongly that their future workers, that our products of our systems need to be great collaborators. We also strongly believe that students there are life and career skills that they need to graduate from high school, and that's part of the whole readiness theme, to be flexible and adaptable, to be able to be self-directed and take initiative, to be project leads, and to demonstrate leadership. And then finally, strongly feel that information, media, and technology skills are a part of a thorough and efficient education that we provide to all of our students, especially being tech literate in today's environment. In a nutshell, P21 strongly supports the notion of creating college-ready, career-ready, and citizenship-ready students. I like to think of that in a different light. I don't know if readiness is just enough anymore, and I think that our mantra in the future, all of us need to focus on college completion and career success, gainful employment, and to be successful, contributing, responsible citizens. And so all of that comes together in what we do with regard to 21st century skills. We have a lot of partners. As I mentioned, we have a 10-year history. Some of the original partners include Cisco and Apple and Intel and Microsoft, also the National Education Association, interestingly enough. A partner today that you'd be interested that has come together because of their strong belief in this kind of well-rounded education is the Walt Disney Company of Southern California and also of Florida. But very proud to have our Vice Chair, Liz Fogel, from Disney. Our chair is from Lego Education, Stefan Turnipseed, and we have at least 25 other partners that I could mention, but I don't want to slight any of them, so I'll just let you know that these businesses have joined us because they know that education is more than just teaching students content. They believe content is critically important, as I've mentioned. But they also know that the integration of the 4 C's and other content themes and other kinds of skills are critically important. In fact, Stefan Turnipseed from Lego has told me on more than one occasion, if you simply give me employees that know their content, that's not good enough to be successful worldwide in Lego education. And so that's why they support us, and that's why they come together and help us give us direction as we move forward. As we look at the country of the U.S., we have 19 leadership states, and we are absolutely thrilled that California is our latest leadership state. And I publicly want to thank Michelle and Mike and David and for your leadership in making that happen. I especially am grateful to Superintendent Torlakson, who has the vision and the courage to put California out front of our national movement. And we are so very fortunate to have you as a team that has been incredible. We had a leadership summit, as you know, in November. And Mike and Principal Cologne, the kids you brought to us from Anaheim, from Savannah High School, were stars. They were rock stars at our summit, and you really are walking the talk. Finally, just to let you know a little bit about what P21 is doing today, we feel very strongly that we need to build a coherent and visible research agenda around our outcomes, that more and more we focus so much on student achievement gains. We believe that as you teach kids to be critical thinkers and problem solvers and collaborators and effective communicators and so forth, all skills that are embedded, by the way, within the Common Core state standards, math, English language arts, and the next generation science standards, and as Michelle has been a very integral part of the social studies standards, all embedded there, very appropriate that we support those and or a state's high quality standards, whatever they choose to follow. But we want to build that research agenda that shows when you teach students 21st century learning competencies or skills, there is transfer of learning and student achievement gain across the board on many measures of success, or many measures of the ways that we assess progress of student achievement. We also support states in providing them with the tools and the resources that they need in order to approach policymakers. We are very active on the Hill. We have a 21st Century Readiness Act that has been supported, has not moved through Congress, but that takes time, and we will be very persistent. We've just hired a new government relations firm that's going to help us that has vast experience, former Secretary of Education Riley's firm in D.C. And finally, with our partners, our leadership states, with our business partners, we continue to provide thought leadership, as evidenced by the fact that we've actually been invited to the White House in early February for a meeting with the National Science and Technology Group to look at how we assess the 4 C's, for lack of, I'm not sure they're using the term 4 C's, but I'll use that term because that's what we're looking at. How do you assess these kinds of skills? Because more and more the world is figuring out that they're very, very important. So with that, Michelle, thank you so much. That's a little bit of an overview at the national level about where we're headed. And I'm just so pleased to be here in 2-degree weather outside in West Virginia.
Well, that's great, Steve. Listen, we know your time is so limited, 50 states, so many involved, and so you giving a little time to us really means a lot. So thank you for all, not just today, all your ongoing support for California and for setting the stage for us. It's just terrific.
Well, thank you.
We have a question for you from our audience, and here it is. The question is, what do you see, if you could go in a little more detail, as the benefits for California specifically in becoming a P21 state?
First, I think California will benefit, but let me speak to the fact that nationally, P21 and the other leadership states will benefit from California joining P21. Obviously, you are a national leader. Everyone pays attention to what happens in California. I just think it's just so outstanding that your Superintendent Torlakson has the courage, along with the leadership in LA County Office of Education and people like Mike and David in Sacramento, David Militzer, and so many more. I don't want to leave anybody out, but you have such a reputation for excellence in California that you have really put a spring in our step. What you can gain from us would be that 10-year rich history as the leading advocacy group in the country for this kind of learning. And we can walk in almost any room in the country and any business in the country and sit at the table and represent well 21st century learning and innovation. And so for you to be able to be part of that team. We're very grateful. You add strength for us, and we hope that we can reciprocate by giving strength and leverage and support and technical assistance to you in California.
Well, thank you, Steve. You know, this is the reason a lot of us chose to go into education, was for these kinds of goals. So it's really exciting to be part of this effort and see it come to fruition. So thank you so much. I'm sure you've seen how the initiative continues to transform schools and lives of individual students. And we'd like to hear, I want to show you how there is just one, California student, Cindy Sanchez from Anaheim Union High School District, describes the transformation.
Freshman and sophomore year, they weren't that great for me. I let my grades slip a lot. And it's something that happened that affected me, but as I got involved in these programs, I saw that all of that kind of went away and my grades got better. I got more involved on campus, and I made great relationships with a lot of different teachers here on campus.
Pretty remarkable. Read between the lines. This brings real meaning and relevancy for young people. You're going to hear from some more students later in the broadcast, because I think that's really about the best part of all this work. It's been nearly a year since California joined the P21 network, and it's really been quite a journey. But our work really is just beginning. We're so lucky to have David Militzer with us from the California Department of Education. And fortunate he is here on the broadcast to talk about where we've been, where we're going in California, and give us his insights. He is leading this effort at our State Department of Ed. So thank you, David, for being here and joining us and sharing your insights from Sacramento.
Well, there's a lot going on in California right now, as we don't need to be reminded. We have major policy changes coming out of Sacramento that's affecting all of our schools, all of our districts, all of our partners. And 21st Century Skills is a framework and a movement that connects with many of them and can connect with many of them in some very positive ways. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute, but first I would like to recognize that there have been many schools, many school leaders, many people in business who have picked up the 21st Century Skills cause in California in the last several years. And I want to thank all of you for that, who have been involved in that. There are hundreds of schools, literally hundreds of schools in California who are working on 21st Century Skills in terms of the changes that are going on. And I also want to recognize Michelle Herzog and Mike Matsuda for your organizational work, plus your continuing leadership in the state. And it's been incredibly valuable, and it's helped given support to our Superintendent Torlikson's ability to be able to proclaim that California wants to be connected formally to the Partnership for 21st Century Skills and wants to be clearly in the front and endorsing the 21st Century Skills movement.
Thank you. It's our pleasure.
Thank you, both. So the history of work of 21st Century Skills in California includes the landmark legislation, AB 250, that was passed a couple of years ago in 2012, that's laying the groundwork for many of the reforms that are now have become policy in the state, including the implementation of the Common Core standards. And the AB 250 reflects 21st Century Skills language and thinking and provides that basis in legislation for education and for schools to move forward in 21st century learning. So there's other initiatives and connections to 21st century learning that may not be apparent to everyone. One of them is the new CTE standards that were approved last year by the State Board of Education, which mirror Common Core and 21st Century Skills language and ideas. They're particularly relevant to our work in career readiness and how that relates to the Common Core. A couple of qualities of the 21st Century Skills movement that stand out as, I think, real innovations. And one is seeing 21st Century Skills and career and college readiness both as relevant to all of our students in all of our schools. A second is that 21st Century Skills, and again, career and college readiness, is something that cuts across the whole curriculum and involves the whole school. And the third is its focus on student outcomes, that students will have 21st century skills, 21st century knowledge, and 21st century competencies by a benefit from their educational experiences. So, sticking with the idea of student outcomes. Yes, I'd like to bring up this slide, and this slide is really, it's really kind of a look at the forest, it's not the trees, and the numbers themselves don't tell, are only part of the story. What it represents is really an illustration of the challenges that we have before us if we are going to transform our schools in the nation and in California into 21st century learning environments. And I don't mean to imply that there are many schools that are doing this now or have been addressing 21st century learning, but we have a long way to go if we look at the big picture. One of the things that 21st century skills movement is looking at is how to promote 21st century learning. What does that really mean in terms of learning? And the Partnership for 21st Century Skills, as well as a number of different partners, backed a study that was released last year on 21st century learning that was done by the national academies. And one of the most significant points of this study is that in 21st century learning is really about learning in 3 domains. It includes cognition, the cognitive domain, but it also includes the interpersonal and the intrapersonal domain. And most importantly, it includes these domains working together. And in education, historically we've focused on the cognitive realm. In the 21st century world, we need to expand that, and we are expanding that in many ways. But in terms of our whole schools, and in terms of all what we do in education, we have to be aware that deep learning is about not just cognitive, but interpersonal and intrapersonal learning domains. Another thought idea, or leading idea, Dr. Payne talked about thought leadership, is to, particularly in our environment in California, as we're entering into conversations around establishing local priorities and responding to the policies that have coming out of Sacramento, to be clear about what our common understanding of the essential components of what a school is. And historically, they've included the instructional component, the management component, and also what we can think of as the focus on the student and the student-centered component, which relates to student climate, it relates to student owning their own learning, and it relates to a lot of those things that we'll talk about in a little bit in terms of how we're implementing some of the policies in California. Another one of the leading, thought leadership ideas that we're benefiting from both in California and I think internationally is work that's come out of the efforts in Ontario, Canada, to reform their schools that have occurred over the last 15 years or so. And the leadership in Ontario is talking a lot and writing about and consulting with other educators about the importance of making sure that we are clear about what are the right drivers for school reform. And here we're talking about policy drivers and how programs are implemented. And the policy drivers that the Ontario leadership is citing as the best drivers for school reform are those that cause whole system improvements on a systemic level that include results for students that we can see and that we can measure, positive results, and that are understandable and that make sense to us. So I can't go into detail because of the time constraints we have in this broadcast, but I'd be glad to follow up with anyone offline or after the seminar is over, and I can be contacted the department for that, and I'd be happy to do that if people are interested.
It's a lot of the same drivers we're seeing with Common Core implementation, the same types of whole school, whole district, interrelated approaches.
Well, it's
we're
interesting
seeing that with P21.
That you'd raise that, because really there's a number of connections between Partnership for 21st Century Skills, Common Core implementation, and the depth of that it will have, the effects in the curriculum in our schools. Our college and career readiness twin priorities, and our experiences that we have in terms of exemplar schools who are already practicing what we're talking about in terms of 21st century learning.
It's very exciting to see.
It is very
Yes.
exciting.
Yeah, tell us briefly about what's going on at the federal level.
Well, the concept of policy drivers is interesting, particularly on the federal level, given that we have three major federal policies that are up for or they're actually somewhat behind the schedule, let's say, for reauthorization. The Elementary and Secondary Education Act, the Perkins CTE Act, and the Career Technical Education Act, then the Workforce Investment Act are all scheduled for congressional action for reauthorization, and they all have relevance for what happens in our schools and how we're preparing students, all students, for 21st century life.
And we heard Steve Payne talking about how they're keeping a good eye on that with their lobbying efforts, and I think it behooves us to take notice of that too, because that will impact us and
yes, it does,
and help us as well.
And the more that we can integrate these connections and that we can leverage the work that's being done through P21, through the national movement, and out here in California where we really are on the cutting edge of some of these changes. So it's very exciting. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit, you heard Dr. Payne talked about the importance of career readiness and Partnership for 21st Century Learning. There are a number of examples that are right now available for modeling, and which is interesting because we've just had an announcement that the money that the legislature and the governor made available in the state budget, $250 million, to fund new career pathways and partnerships with businesses between schools and businesses, was just announced yesterday in Sacramento by Superintendent Troyson and Senator Steinberg. And these dollars are meant to work with the Common Core implementation and work with our other policy initiatives at the local level to improve our career readiness programs for all students. So I would ensure there's the CDE website has a lot of information about this, and you can easily Google it if you don't know how to get there. And as I said, Superintendent Troyson just announced this through a press release today.
Yeah, and it's early 2014. We know local control funding formulas are at the top of everybody's attention right now. So the
local control funding formula is part of the local control in the Local Control Plan and Accountability Act, which is their twin pieces of legislation that really give local educators and partners much more flexibility on the local level to direct money towards priorities that are important locally. The Local Control Accountability Plan has established 8 priorities at the state level, and that can be addressed through the local planning process. The 8 priorities are divided into 3 different categories, and the 3 categories are student achievement, conditions of learning, and engagement. And by broadening the priorities from the historical accountability measures of academic achievement to include engagement and conditions of learning, it provides the local school districts and their partners to work on doing the right thing at the local level for what their students need. So this is a real opportunity. This is a real shift in terms of responsibilities and also accountability. And it connects back with our Partnership for 21st Century structure and our what we know about deep learning and the three learning domains of cognition, of interpersonal and intrapersonal learning. So we're on the edge of great changes in our schools in California, and we have a terrific opportunity to synthesize what we know from these various areas, put them together, and help continue to improve our schools and transform our educational experiences for many of our students.
So it's great. So thank you for all the information, David. It's great to see districts can leverage different initiatives and now funding opportunities and use P21 as their frame for moving education forward.
Thank you, Michelle.
So great. I know you're a great resource for all of us, so it's wonderful. There's a number of opportunities that you shared with us, particularly now, as you mentioned, the implementation of Common Core gives us some other leverage points, LCAP plans for schools to focus on the 4 C's. So it's not just some add-on soft skills, but they can see them as really essential skills for preparing our kids in the future. I think now we have another short video clip from some of the students. We want to hear what they have to say and listen to see how articulate they are in talking about the 4 C's and how they seem to really get it. So let's listen to them.
We're not just required to do our work and turn it in and just, get lectures from the teacher. We're required to interact with everybody in class, with the teacher. My teacher, especially in English, he poses a lot of critical thinking questions where what we're learning, we have to apply it to our lives.
The best thing about Savannah being a P21 school is that everyone can kind of find their own niche, and everyone's comfortable here at Savannah. There's a lot of different pathways and athletic programs and clubs that everyone can kind of just fit in. And high school is really about discovering yourself, and Savannah High School really facilitates that.
The best thing about being a P21 school and having international students is really helping them learn to communicate with people from where we're from, and us communicate with people from other places. So having the new club, the Worldwide Help, is really helpful to everyone, even people who are here, because while we're tutoring them, we're learning to communicate with them as well as them learning to communicate with us.
Okay, so they really get it. I love to hear them articulate that. And none of that was scripted for them. That came right from those kids. So it's fun just to listen to them. We could do that all day. So let's spend some time talking with some of our real practitioners to provide more of a snapshot of what P21 can and does look like. It's such a privilege for me to reintroduce my good friend and colleague, Michael Mitsuda from the Anaheim Union High School District. And as David mentioned, Michael and I, we've been doing a lot. It's something many of us believe in and are so excited to see come into fruition. Michael, it's great to have you back. And talk to us a little bit from a district point of view, how P21 has been realized in the work you're doing there.
Well, Michelle, it is great to be here, and as much as we celebrated AB 250, the passage of the Common Core and the embedded 4 Cs, and also to have California become a P21 state, the challenge is really moving from policy to practice, and really what it comes down to is how do we get the teachers and most importantly, the students to take ownership. So in Anaheim, we came up with a concept called Our Future Now, in which we organize the students in a way that and we framed these issues in a way that they took ownership. And I brought a short video so that we can see what we did, what the kids did.
Okay, let's take a look at this.
At the P21 Summit, they asked us if education serves us or if we serve education. And I feel that right now, we are serving education, and that's not the way it should be.
P21 is a movement that will not just change education as a whole, but will also change the manner in which students apply their knowledge gained from the high school experience to real-world situations. In the real world, decisions are not made by taking timed multiple-choice tasks, but instead made through the skills an individual possesses, through experiences which will enable them to make the right choice.
I'm trying to change our education because the current one that we have is problematic, and it leaves people left out. For those kids who aren't engaged or as smart as other kids, they are disregarded and at the back of the classroom, and they're just told to sit down and shut up. But that's not the kind of system that's really progressive in our city. So what we did is, for P21, we're promoting that everyone gets the most out of education, because that's what we're trying to do. People who grow up and get a job will come back to the community and give back to it.
So if I may, everyone in the audience who is here in support of P21, please stand up. Mayor Tate and honorable city council members, as you can see, support for P21 is vast. I hope and pray that you will make the right decision this evening and make Anaheim a P21 city. All of us here tonight are counting on you to make the right decision. So please, do not let us down. Thank you.
It's kind of like that stepping stool that gives students a strong foundation early on in their life that they can definitely use, in their careers and in their college education.
It's a great piece. We talk about preparing kids for college and career, and you're preparing them for civic life. We failed to mention Superintendent Torlakson is also co-chairing the California Task Force on K-12 Civic Learning with our California Chief Justice Cantil Sakayue. This is a great example. Kids are at City Hall addressing issues, advocating for themselves, solving problems to be engaged citizens in our American democracy.
A huge civic education project. And I'm glad David brought up the importance of the LCAP. And I think that, again, that's an opportunity for local districts, local practitioners to ensure that these issues are embedded in the LCAP. Especially implementation of the Common Core, including the 4 Cs, and access to a whole curriculum that's relevant to these important issues in the world. So huge opportunities, and I think that this is the time to take advantage of this window.
Yeah, and I know you're leading that across the district and the state, and a lot of your work with Common Core. A question from the audience comes to us. Explain a little how you really articulate the connections between P21 and the Common Core standards.
Well, we felt it was very important to align the district policy with state policies, and this is something that I think is very important to ensure that districts either support a resolution around P21. There's a lot of language out there. You can take it off our website or off the Tom Torlakson statement, but that then gives the teachers and the practitioners, the principals, the permission to move forward in a way that engages kids, that promotes project-based learning and these civic initiatives at a local level.
Mm-hmm. There's another great question here about underperforming schools. How do you address that in your district? Is this just for some kids?
Well, that's a great question, and as I think we all know, that the metrics and the accountability is changing. The emphasis of Common Core is all about literacy and college and career readiness. So I think as we pivot to these new accountability pieces, it's vital that the underperforming kids are defined by those new metrics. Access to an A through G, a whole curriculum that's A through G. Ensuring that literacy, speaking and writing is embedded across the curriculum. And I think that if we do these two things, we're going to be in good shape when the new assessment comes down the pike.
Great point. Thanks, Michael. That's terrific. Terrific. Pretty inspiring to see students so engaged in advocating for their education, knowing that it's really going to impact their future. So let's take a closer look at P21 Exemplar School, the first one in California to be recognized as such by the Partnership for 21st Century Skills and showcased at the recent P21 Summit in Washington, D.C. Savannah High School, Anaheim Union High School District. We're so thrilled to have you with us, Manuel Colon. Welcome, and thank you for joining us today in person.
No, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Great. All right, so I wish we had all time to talk about all the great things going on there, and you could spend days seeing it. Talk a little bit about what it means to be a P21 exemplar school and some of the benefits and challenges you've seen.
You know, I really appreciate this opportunity. I think for us, it really has validated us being college and career ready and us preparing our students to be college and career ready. I think it's helped us to focus. It's helped us to really see ourselves as leading the way. But I think this journey wasn't done overnight, and I want to make sure I stress that it wasn't done overnight. It really was a journey. It was a journey for our staff and our whole entire school community. A few years ago, we talked about our vision, and in that visioning, we had all of our stakeholders, our parents, our teachers, our students, our community members, and we asked the question, what do we want out of our students? What do we expect? And what can we ensure the community that when they graduate from Savannah High School, these students will have these skills? And so that was a key moment and a shift in the culture of our campus, because it really helped us to understand what our job is. And in that conversation, our school community really stopped to think about what are those key elements, those key skills, the key knowledge and skills that students will need to be successful both in college and career. Through that conversation, we developed our student learning capacities. And these learning capacities really are P21 skills. We talked about as a staff, we want our kids to be communicators, collaborators, critical thinkers, and innovators, and be creative. But we also talked about them being personal and academically accountable. And we said, we got to extend it further than that and say, they have to be globally aware and culturally competent. So when we came as a school community and said, these are the skills that our kids need to have to be successful in life, it was like a big aha moment for our entire community to say, we believe in these, we expect these out of our kids, and we will work towards ensuring that they have these skills. The next question was, well, how do we measure these? How do we measure critical thinking and inquiry? How do we measure communication and collaboration? And so one of our wonderful teachers, Mr. Mike Switzer, said, you know what, I got a great idea. I said, why don't we create activities? Why don't we create performance tasks that really focus and explicitly teach and ensure that our kids are doing these things? And so as a school community, we started to develop a project called the Capstone Project. And in the Capstone Project, each course developed performance tasks that really demonstrated these learning capacities, and that the students knew what they were, the staff knew how to address that, and also how students are going to acquire them and how do they demonstrate them. And so for us, this became now the framework for how we do everything on our campus. So in our Capstone Project, so just to give you an idea, in our Capstone Project, each course has 3 performance tasks that they develop. And in those performance tasks, they have these learning capacities embedded in them. Now, as the students articulate through our school, they collect all of these performance tasks that they have acquired and developed on their own and learn from them. When they become seniors, we have a capstone portfolio that they create, and in that capstone portfolio, they demonstrate to us that they have acquired these skills. So this is their showcase piece of this learning. This is how we're measuring, did they actually learn them while they were at Savannah? So what we do in our final piece to that is that we do an exit interview. And in that interview, the students utilize this capstone portfolio and go to their artifacts and demonstrate, this is where I've learned to think critically. This is where I've learned to collaborate. This is where I've learned really to be culturally competent in our society. A panel of people interview them, a panel of people ask them questions and put them on the spot, challenge them to ensure that they have learned these capacities. And I do believe that at Savannah, when they go through this process, we can ensure that they have learned these capacities. Now, you asked a question about all students. All of our students go through this process. Yeah. Our special education students, our English learners go through this. We believe that they all can meet that expectation, and they do. So it's really exciting to see. We do have a lot of programs at Savannah, and I want to make sure that, that I also emphasize that we have our college-bound programs. We have AVID, MESA, Puente, Gear Up. We also have CTE pathways, our medical careers, our automotive technology, our culinary arts. All of these programs all are aligned to our Capstone Project. We all have invested in it. We all believe in it. We've all bought into it. And so when you see the capstone interview and at the conclusion, you see examples and artifacts from a wide array of our campus. Everybody is represented. You see examples of this from the PE department. You see examples of this from the culinary arts department. You see examples of this from our visual and performing arts department. So it really is the framework of how we do instruction and how we do learning at Savannah. And I believe that P21 really has created this framework for us at Savannah, and I believe that our kids are college and career ready based on that.
Okay. It's fantastic. You make it sound so easy. I'm glad you mentioned that it didn't come easy and you're probably still working on things as you go along. This is a different way of teaching that I'm sure your students are not familiar with, or your parents. Here's a question I know it's on a lot of folks' minds is, what was the reaction from parents? Because many of us didn't grow up in that type of school setting, and now you're experimenting with my kid. So how did parents react when you started to transform the school in this way?
You know, I think what parents needed to understand is that the curriculum is the curriculum, and you know, Common Core is exciting for us because it totally aligned to everything we were already doing. So I think the parents needed to know that the kids need to have their knowledge and skills first as the primary. So the curriculum is the curriculum, it's the standards. But what they appreciated to hear is that through our learning capacities, our students are learning skills that will make them successful in college and career. When they knew that these skills were very specific and that we would be able to measure them, they were very excited. And I think it wasn't necessarily that they were wondering if we were doing something new, but really that we were now focused on ensuring that their kids had the skills they needed to be successful.
And that's what all parents want. They want their kids to be prepared for success.
Absolutely.
And all of that. And you have a very diverse school. This is not one certain group. You've got a real mix of great kids there. Another question we're seeing from here, students with special needs. How do you respond to that? How do they work with this?
You know, it was interesting because obviously our special ed teachers were a little hesitant. And really it's about walking them through the process. And you know, when you talk about a performance task, for example, all students can perform a task, let's say, for example, all students at any level. And if you take it from that perspective that we're teaching them to perform a task, we're teaching them that they have to have an output once they've learned the material, then you can backwards map from that. And if you know that, then the teachers can do that. And I think we need to trust our teachers and know that they can use their skills to really scaffold that for all of our kids. And so at Savannah, our special ed teachers did that. They said, you know what, our kids can do it as well. They scaffolded, they embedded the 4 C's, they embedded our learning capacities into their activities, into their lessons, into what they were doing. And it was so amazing to see at the interview stage, when the students got there, they could articulate how they've achieved these capacities. They articulated through their examples of their artifacts, they articulated through their learning, and I think they were surprised themselves at how well they can do. You know, and I think I want to go back to the capstone interview piece because it's like a job interview. The students are dressed professionally. It's like a dissertation defense because the students are having to use artifacts to describe how they've learned these capacities. And so it's very rigorous. And I don't think that we laxed a little bit on any of our kids. And I do believe that when we had interviews with students with disabilities or special education students, they shined and they did very well. They rose to that expectation.
Well, and your teaching staff is very diverse too. This was a shift for them. It's fun to come to the campus and see the excitement with them because I love how you talked about treating them as professionals, trusting teachers. It's giving a great sense of professionalism, I think, back to the profession. This isn't, you know, teaching out of the box.
Absolutely.
It's relying on teachers' background and expertise and allowing them to be creative and collaborative too is such a powerful tool. It's invigorating. Whether you've been teaching a year or 20 years, that's another outcome that we don't talk about much. Of course, we need to be student focused, but to see that energy in teachers come back is, I think, very exciting. I think, Michael, you've seen that too, haven't you? Some of that response.
Using the framework as the driver, to use David's words, I think that's really important, rather than the next big test as the driver. I think that's a really important distinction as we move forward.
Yeah, you know, and we're doing training here, of course. I work with a lot of teachers, and this is what brought us to the show of education, to create this kind of exciting environment. not to teach from a script or something very confining, siloed education, but to really make it meaningful, relevant. That's what Common Core is about too. So engaging. Yeah. It almost makes you want to go back to school, doesn't it? Yeah. So it's pretty obvious to see, Manuel, why you're so excited about the P21 work going on at your school. We asked a few of your students, of course, to give us their impressions, and I want you to listen very carefully to these three. The language, the articulation, the passion that they talk about in describing in responding to a simple question, what has this done for you? What does it feel like to be at Savannah?
My participation in the MESA program is helping me as far as communication and collaboration, because every project is worked on as a team, and you need to learn how to accurately communicate your ideas to other partners and know how to work together to put those ideas to work.
Savannah has really shaped me because I do a lot of communication with my patients and my residents at the nursing homes, because we actually do a lot of on-site work. And then sometimes our patients aren't really cooperative in a way, but we just have to learn that sometimes they just don't want to do the things they want to do, and then we just got to work with what we have.
Savannah High School has prepared me to be globally aware and culturally competent because we interact in different activities, and it's so many different people. And one of the things in the Spanish programs, they do like El Día de los Muertos, and it's not just Hispanics going to these things. I saw like different people there, and it was just so many people. It surprised me actually when I went this year, because I thought it was just going to be a few people, because I don't think like a lot of people were very like involved with it, but actually it surprised me to see that it was so many people there, and it wasn't just Hispanics. It was like African Americans, and everybody was dancing and enjoying it, and I think that's what was important, that we were interacting well with each other. Great sound bites. Globally aware and culturally competent. They get it. They understand what that means. And I loved the gal before, I think Gabriella, we're talking about her work with the nursing home and that, and she was so careful the way she said, sometimes things aren't just so collaborative or cooperative, but we deal with it. And that really struck me, because that's the real world. We don't get to pick often who we work with or collaborate or live with or anything like that. So to develop that is a very difficult skill to acquire, and they're getting it before they leave high school, so that's very exciting. Totally unscripted. It's great to hear that. And I'm sure many schools that are using this approach are hearing these kinds of testimonies from kids and parents too, which is really neat. So here's a question for the two of you. Insights you might have about P21 implementation at the site and district levels. Michael or Manuel, any insights you can share with our audience about that? Where do you start? How do you leverage things?
I think,
Where
Michelle,
do
you
go?
touched upon it. The important piece is framing these reforms in a way that teachers will take ownership, that they feel a part of this, that they are empowered to create their performance task assessments. And I think, so from a district level, that's been our Anaheim Union High School district approach. We have 1,300 teachers, and much rather see what they can produce than 5 or 6 experts that are brought into the district. Because we really value our teaching staff, and I think that's the beginning part of this, framing it in a way that they can take ownership.
I would agree with Michael. I think that that's key in not only in the implementation, but also in the sustainability. And one of the things that I would add is the visioning. When we have the vision from our district that this is important, it's much easier to implement it on our site, even though this is what we believe. But I think it does help to have the vision from our school board, who believes in this, who's adopted it and said this is important to us. For us at the school sites, makes it a lot more relevant, and also to see it at the state level as well.
Okay, so I don't want to put you on the spot, but what do you see as some next steps?
I'm excited. I'm excited about what our teachers are producing. I think for us, I don't know what the next steps are necessarily, not because we don't have a vision as to where we're going, but I think because our teachers are being so innovative. When you give the teachers the leverage, when you give them the freedom to be innovative and be excited about it, it's amazing what they come up with.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's see, any other questions or anything from the field here? Again, asking about special needs, for example, students with autism. You're seeing them, I'm sure, grow and benefit from this too. We have just so much to share. I wish we had more time, but I so appreciate what you bring to this. I want to take this opportunity to thank all of our guests today for sharing their insights about the Partnership for 21st Century Skills. Stephen Payne, thank you for hanging in with us and contributing and to this ongoing work and everything that you're doing to continue to support this. It means a lot to us out here on the West Coast.
Thank you.
And I want to thank David Militzer for supporting you and all of us in the work that we continue to do. And Michael Matsuda is continuing to take charge person and doing more and more all the time. Great leadership that we all aspire to replicate and continue. And Manuel Colon, thank you. Great principal, great leadership. And thank you for your willingness to share with so many others in the field.
Absolutely.
So that's terrific. I want to also thank our wonderful tech crew here at LA County Office of Education. We're trying to make this look easy, but you got to know there's a lot of people behind the scenes really working hard. So thank you, Tyler Cook, the division director, and the crew for helping us put this together. I need to thank our wonderful Division of Curriculum and Instructional Services, where I am, and that's led by the wonderful Raynette Sanchez and Yvonne Contreras. Can't do this without their wonderful support and leadership. Our LA County Office of Ed is moving forward to try to identify some other exemplary practices in LA County across the state. I want you to continue to check our website at lacoe.edu for more information as the year progresses. And you can also find information and resources at the California Center for 21st Century Education, www.cal21.org. This was established by Michael in his spare time. I don't know how he does it, but that's a great resource too. And of course, you can always go to the Partnership for 21st Century Skills website, p21.org. That's easy. They have always got great ideas, resources. Stephen Payne is leading that charge and doing some marvelous work. And it's just great how collaborative. People are walking the walk, you know, they're really sharing all the good work going on. And so just to close, I want to just quote our State Superintendent Tom Torlakson in the California Department of Education news release that he released on March 11th, 2013, after we became a P21 state. He said, California is part of a growing national movement to teach students the critical thinking and problem-solving skills they need for college and careers. Forging a partnership with P21 provides California with additional tools and resources to implement the Common Core state standards and our newly revised career technical education standards. This partnership underscores our commitment to prepare every student for the challenges of a changing world. Thank you for joining us.